history would be bad too.
Okay, so
Reading.
today we'll talk about the body fluid. First we'll see the volume of body fluid in adults, adult male, adult females and children. Then we'll talk about the compartments of body fluid. Body fluid is present in two compartments in our body, intercellular compartment and extracellular fluid compartment. So those are two fluid compartments present in our body, intercellular fluid compartment and extracellular fluid compartment. We'll see what are those compartments. Then we'll talk about sub-compartments. Extracellular fluid compartment has a number of sub-compartments. We'll talk about those, and then we'll talk about the distribution of electrolytes. Main electrolytes. We have main electrolytes in our body, just only few. Those are very important electrolytes. We'll see the concentration of the electrolytes in different compartments. Then we'll talk about the water imbalance, body buffers, and regulation of pH. You know a buffer. What's the function of a buffer? Buffer tries to keep the pH constant. Right? If our body pH changes, then buffer will come forward to bring it back to normal. And that's why the body pH, inside our body, the pH is always constant. If you didn't have any body buffers or buffers in our body, then pH would change very quickly, right? And that is dangerous. If your pH goes down, that means your body is acidic. pH less means acidic. pH more means alkaline, right? And neutral pH is what? 7.0. That's neutral, right? Not acidic, not basic or alkaline. Now, if the pH goes below 7, it becomes acidic. Above 7, becomes basic or alkaline. So both are harmful. If your body becomes acidic, you can tell. You know, that is of course acid is not good. Okay, so our body has some buffers. They always keep the pH constant. So we'll see how that happens. So the body water content or body fluid content, same thing. In infants, 73% or more volume of body is water. In adult males, around 60% volume of body is water. And in adult females, around 50% body volume is water. That means what? Infants have more water or body fluid than adult male, and adult male has more body fluid or water than adult female. Why female has less body water? The reason is female body in general, not for every case. In case of female, the body fat, the amount of fat in the body is more than the adult male, and in adult male, the amount of skeletal muscle is more. Remember, fat contains less water than the skeletal muscle. The skeletal muscle contains more water than the fat. Since female body has more fat, that means it has less water. Since male body has more skeletal muscle than the fat, that's why the water or body fluid is more in adult male. Makes sense? Because of more skeletal muscle. Infants has low body fat, and that's why infant's body fluid is more. Water content declines to around 45% in old age. You know that when we get old, our body shrinks, muscles shrink, okay? And that's why the water content in the body goes down. That's true for both male and female. Now, fluid compartments. We have fluid in two locations. Intercellular fluid, that means inside the cells of the body. We have billions of cells, and inside the cells we have fluid. If you add all cells together, all cells together, and add that fluid, that is the intercellular fluid compartment. Okay? And we know that in between the cells we have fluid too, not inside but outside of the cells of the body. So those the fluid outside of the cell, that's the extracellular. Extra means outside, extracellular fluid. So fluid is located in two compartments. Inside the cells, and that is the intercellular fluid compartment, and outside of the cells, that's the extracellular fluid compartment. More fluid is present inside the cells. 2/3 of total body water of fluid is present inside the cells. And in adult male, the total volume of water is 40 liter. So 40 liter water we have in our body, and 2/3 of 40 liter is present inside the cells of the body. That means 25 liter. And 1/3, that is 15 liter, is present in outside of the cells, not bounded by the cell membrane. And in case of extracellular fluid compartment, we have sub-compartments. That means we have different separate locations where the extracellular fluids are located. What are the major sub-compartments? Plasma, that is inside the blood vessels. We know that inside the blood vessels we have blood, right? Inside the cardiovascular system we have blood, and blood has 55% of blood is plasma, right? 45% is cells. So that is one. Blood plasma is one extracellular fluid compartment. That's the largest. Sorry, no, that's not the largest. Interstitial fluid compartment. What is interstitial fluid compartment? In between the cells of our body. That's the interstitial. And that's the largest subcompartment of extracellular fluid, 12 liter. Out of 15 liter, 12 liters are present in between the cells. That means interstitial fluid. 3 liters are present in the blood, plasma of the blood. And other compartments are lymph. You know that lymphatic system has fluid, right? That lymph contains water or fluid. That is another subcompartment. Cerebrospinal fluid around the brain and the spinal cord. You have cerebrospinal fluid. That is another extracellular fluid subcompartment. Humors of the eye. Inside your eyeball, you have aqueous and vitreous humors. So that's the humors of the eye. Synovial fluid. You know that inside the synovial joints, you have synovial cavity, right? And inside the cavity, you have fluid. That's the synovial fluid in the joints. Serous fluid. You remember in between the parietal and visceral layers of your pericardium, you have fluid, right? You remember pericardial cavity? The pericardium that covers the heart, you have two layers, right? Visceral and parietal. In between you have fluid, that lubricating fluid, right? Around your lungs, you have pleural cavity. You remember that, right? Also, lung has two layers in its covering, the parietal and visceral. In between, you have the pleural cavity that contains fluid. In your abdomen, you have peritoneal cavity. Again, between the parietal and visceral. So, in between the parietal and visceral, pericardium, pleura, peritoneum, you have the fluid in those cavities. Pericardial cavity, pleural cavity, and peritoneal cavity fluid. So those are called serous fluid. Just remember that. Those are the serous fluids. Gastrointestinal secretions. You know that inside your mouth, inside your stomach, inside your intestine, secretion occurs. So that's another fluid compartment. So total body water is 40 liters, and that's in adult male. You can divide the body fluid into two compartments first. Intercellular fluid compartment, or ICF, 25 liter, 40%. Extracellular fluid compartment, 50, that's 50 liter, and it has sub-compartments. And we have talked about those sub-compartments. But the largest one is the interstitial fluid in between the cells, 12 liter. Now we talk about the composition of body fluid. Body fluid is mainly water, but in water, electrolytes and non-electrolytes are present. Those are called solids. So in water, you have electrolytes and non-electrolytes. Those chemicals are present. Those are called solids. Now, non-electrolytes, most of the non-electrolytes are organic chemicals, and they do not dissociate in water. Example, glucose, lipids, creatine, urea. Those are non-electrolytes. Those chemicals don't carry electrical charges, positive or negative. They do not carry. That's why those are non-electrolytes. Electrolytes easily dissociate, and then they carry electrical charges. For example, if you just think that sodium chloride, it will easily dissociate into sodium and chloride, and then both of them will carry electrical charges. One will carry positive, another will carry negative. So these are the electrolytes. Inorganic salts. This is inorganic salt. We know that sodium chloride, right? Salt, regular salt. So you see, can easily break and produce electrolytes, carrying electrical charges. Acids and bases. Let me give you one example. Hydrochloric acid, all of you know that, HCl, easily will split into hydrogen and chlorine. Both are carrying electrical charges. So, inorganic salts, acids, bases, and some proteins, those are electrolytes. And they can produce electrical, they can dissociate into the chemicals, those will carry electrical charges. Now we'll see a couple of electrolytes inside and outside of the cells. Very important electrolytes we'll talk about. First, we'll see, just focus on two things, not in blood plasma, just focus here, interstitial fluid and intercellular fluid. This is intercellular fluid inside the cell, and this is interstitial in between the cells. So we'll see the concentration inside the cell and interstitial fluid in those two fluids, interstitial fluid and intercellular fluid. We'll see first sodium, very important electrolyte. Sodium, remember, is always the concentration of sodium is high outside of the cell compared to inside. So concentration of sodium is always higher outside of the cell, that means in the interstitial fluid. So now if you see here the sodium concentration in interstitial fluid, this blue bar is much higher than the intercellular fluid inside the cell. Inside the cell, sodium is very low. Outside of the cell, in the interstitial fluid, sodium is very high. Potassium is just opposite. Potassium concentration is very high inside the cell. That means in the intercellular fluid, and very low outside of the cell. Okay. Another important is chloride. Okay. Chloride is high in the interstitial fluid, and chloride is very low inside the cell. So intercellular fluid chloride is very low. And last one, protein. Protein is very high inside the cell compared to outside of the cell. The blue one is the outside. So if you see the protein amount is high inside the cell and low in outside of the cell. So just remember those few I have mentioned: sodium, potassium, chloride, and proteins inside and outside of the cells. Inside the cells means intercellular fluid, and outside of the cell means interstitial fluid. Why protein is high inside the cell? Just, common sense. Who produces protein? Yes, cells produce cells, and cells inside the cell you have many organelles, right? Which organelles produce protein? If I say, does mitochondria produce protein? No, mitochondria produce what? ATP, right?
Yes.
Who produces protein?
Ribosome?
Yes, ribosomes. Rough endoplasmic reticulum, right? Ribosomes produce because they are attached to rough endoplasmic reticulum. Yes. So you now know that protein is synthesized or produced inside the cells. So definitely we will find more proteins inside the cells than outside, because the proteins are being produced inside the cells. Okay? Sodium is always high outside of the cell, and that's why when we talked about depolarization, do you remember? I said that potassium concentration is always high inside the cell, and sodium is always low inside the cell, high outside of the cell. And that's why when the ion channels get open, sodium goes in, because the concentration is higher in outside. Makes sense? That first sodium goes in, and the resting membrane potential starts to move to depolarization upwards, towards positive, because sodium is positive going in, right? And we are measuring inside the cell. That's why depolarization occurs. So depolarization occurs using sodium concentration higher in outside of the cell, and that is true everywhere in your body. Sodium is always high in the outside of the cell. Water balance. The volume of water, the amount of water we intake, the same amount of water we excrete. So the intake and output are equal, and that is 2.5 liter. We take 2.5 liters of water every day, and same volume gets out from the body. How we take water? Beverages, food, and metabolic water. Remember one thing, metabolism is a continuous process, right, in our body. Continuously in living body, metabolism is occurring. And metabolism produces few things. What are the things produced in our body in metabolism? Metabolism produces, anybody? Say loud, you're right. ATP, very good. Metabolism, when you start exercise, metabolism increases, right? So just think that, what happens? Heat, right? Metabolism produces heat. Metabolism produces, we take oxygen and we release what? Carbon dioxide. So metabolism produces carbon dioxide. And another thing metabolism produces, that is water. Water is also produced by metabolism. A small amount, but water is also produced in metabolism. So we get water in our body from outside when we drink, when we eat, and also some amount of water is created in the body during metabolism. Output, we excrete the water mainly as urine. Most of the water gets out from the body as urine, but also other means insensible water losses, skin and lung. Through skin, by evaporation, continuously 24 hours, small amount of water is getting out from the body through the skin. By what? By evaporation. And that we don't see. 24 hours water is getting out through the skin by evaporation, that we don't see. When we talk, when we breathe, we lose water. Water gets out from the body. So those are insensible because we don't feel, right? You can't, when you talk, do you see water is getting out? No, we don't see, right? When evaporation is occurring through the skin, we don't see that water is getting out. So those are insensible water loss. Make sense? Now, how about urination? Do you see? Yes, so it is sensible. How about sweating? You see, right? So those are sensible water loss. So we lose water in sensible and insensible ways, or means. Regulation of water intake. So in your brain, you have a very important structure that is called hypothalamus, and in your hypothalamus you have thirst center. Very interesting. So you have thirst center in your hypothalamus. Probably you remember I mentioned before that hypothalamus has one important function. What is that? Food and water intake. Do you remember anybody? Food and water intake. Two important functions I mentioned probably. One is regulation of body temperature. Your hypothalamus controls the body temperature. Number two, I said in NP1 when we studied the brain, that food and water intake, how much you will eat and drink. Okay? So how hypothalamus controls that? Because hypothalamus has thirst centers, and that thirst center can be stimulated. The thirst center has osmoreceptors, and those receptors could be stimulated by increased plasma osmolarity. So osmoreceptors could be stimulated if the blood becomes thick. Concentration of plasma of the blood increases. Okay, that means if the, now you tell me, when I say that concentration of plasma increases, that means water amount decreases or increases? Decreases. Water decreases, right? That means concentration increases if you take the water out. So when I say that plasma concentration has increased, that means the water in the plasma has decreased, right? So that will stimulate the hypothalamus. Osmoreceptors in the hypothalamus, that water level has decreased in the plasma. Angiotensin 2 will directly stimulate the osmoreceptors of the hypothalamus. Dry mouth. If your mouth is becomes dry, that will send signal from the mouth to the hypothalamus and stimulate the osmoreceptors. That mouth is dry, you need to drink. Okay. Decrease of blood volume and or pressure. They are related to each other. You know that if blood volume goes down, the blood pressure will go down. If blood volume increases, then blood pressure will increase. So, decreased blood volume or blood pressure will stimulate the osmoreceptors of hypothalamus. Because just think that in all these instances, you need to drink water. Make sense? Because first, if the water in your plasma of blood goes down, you need to drink water, right? So that's why that will stimulate the hypothalamus and you will drink water. Number 2, angiotensin 2. You know that angiotensin 2 does what? Increases the blood pressure. We have talked about that before. The main function of angiotensin 2 is increasing the blood pressure. Because renin is released when blood pressure goes down, mean blood pressure goes down. Okay? So, angiotensin 2 should stimulate the hypothalamus to tell the person to drink water. Dry mouth. When your mouth becomes dry, your body water level goes down, right? Your mouth gets dry. So you have to drink water. So that will also stimulate the hypothalamus. And hypothalamus will then tell you to drink. Substantial decrease of blood volume and blood pressure. In those cases, you have to drink water to increase the blood volume, to increase the blood pressure. Okay? So those are the factors that will stimulate the osmoreceptors of the hypothalamus, and you will drink water. Now, if you drink too much water, then the osmoreceptors in your hypothalamus will be inhibited because your plasma concentration will go down. That will inhibit the hypothalamus. So you won't feel thirsty. Here just they have shown the regulation of antidiuretic hormone release. So if the osmolarity increases, that means what? Osmolarity increase means the concentration of water is less in your plasma. Okay, that will stimulate the osmoreceptors of hypothalamus. We have just seen that. And if the plasma volume or blood pressure decreases, that will also, they did not show here, that will also directly stimulate osmoreceptors in the hypothalamus, also stimulate the baroreceptors. You don't need to know this. This is kind of not clear. This we have shown here directly. Anyway, so just know here that if the osmolarity increases, that means in your plasma the water is less. That's why the osmolarity is more. That will stimulate the osmoreceptors in the hypothalamus. Then hypothalamus is directly connected to the pituitary gland. We send signal to the pituitary. Which pituitary? Posterior pituitary. That will release antidiuretic hormone. Okay? Then antidiuretic hormone will go enter into the blood. Blood will take it to the kidneys. And antidiuretic hormone, you know that, will work in the last part of the nephron, the collecting duct, and will cause the reabsorption of water. Okay? So when reabsorption of water will occur, that will increase the water in your plasma of the blood. That means the osmolarity will go down. Okay? So that's how the osmolarity will be uh, decreased. Disorders of water balance. Water imbalance can cause a number of serious consequences. Just to know a couple of them. One is called dehydration. Dehydration is very commonly heard term. We always hear that. What is dehydration? Decreased amount of water in the body. That is dehydration. Now, you tell me if your body loses water. First, the water, if you get a cut or if you, a lot of sweating occurs from your body, from which compartment the water will get out from the body first? From which compartment it will be easy for water to get out? Outside of the cell or inside the cell? Outside, that's simple, right? Because the fluid inside the cell is bounded by plasma membrane or cell membrane. It's not easy that fluid water will get out. But outside of the cell, from outside of the cell, it's easy for the water to get out from the body. That's why dehydration occurs due to the loss of fluid, mainly from the extracellular fluid compartment, not from intercellular. So first, fluid will get out from extracellular compartment because it is easy. Okay, what can cause dehydration? Common causes: hemorrhage, that is bleeding, severe burns, prolonged vomiting or diarrhea, profuse sweating. If excessive sweating occurs, that will cause dehydration. Water deprivation, if you don't drink water, that will cause dehydration. Diuretic abuse, if you take diuretics, then the output of urine will be more, right? So that can cause dehydration. Some medicines, like some medicines to decrease the blood pressure, those are diuretics, produce more urine. So if you take more than normal amount dose, then dehydration can occur. That's why the high blood pressure patients who every day take diuretics, that pill, to decrease the blood pressure by producing more urine, they must be careful that dehydration doesn't occur. Okay? Always must be careful. Edema, atypical accumulation of fluid in the interstitial fluid compartment. This is a nice definition, I like. Atypical. That means what? Abnormal. We must have fluid in the interstitial compartment. We must have fluid in the interstitial fluid compartment. We have fluid. But if that fluid content is atypical, like this is normal interstitial fluid amount. Now if more fluid accumulates in certain area of the body, in the interstitial space, that is edema. Okay, so this is not typical, this is not normal, this is normal, but here you have more. Okay, so that's the edema.
Does that only occur in the extracellular or the intracellular?
Extracellular.
Only extracellular.
Remember, your cells will always try to maintain the intercellular fluid volume and concentration normal. Otherwise, cells will not be able to perform their function. You know that inside the cell you have the organelles, right? Mitochondria, as you said, ribosomes, right? Those are performing a number of important functions, right? If inside the cell the fluid volume changes, as well as if the concentration of fluid changes, both will bother those organelles to perform their function. That's why always cell membrane, that's why you have cell membrane, to maintain the volume and concentration constant inside the cell. That's why the changes occur in the outside of the cell, not inside the cell. Okay? That's why in edema, fluid accumulates outside of the cell. If fluid starts, for any reason, if more fluid is produced inside the cell, then the cell member will let the fluid get out and try to maintain it. Okay? Intercellular fluid environment is very important to perform the cellular functions. Okay. Now I'll talk about acid-base balance. The normal pH of arterial blood is 7.4. That means slightly alkaline. You know that blood is slightly alkaline. You already know that. 7.0 is neutral. Above 7.0 is alkaline. So slightly alkaline. Venous blood and interstitial fluid pH is 7.35 and intercellular fluid pH is 7.0. Now alkalosis and acidosis. If the pH goes below normal, below means less than normal, that is acidosis. We usually say if the pH goes below, arterial pH goes below 7.35, normally it should be 7.4. If it goes below 7.35, in that case we say that the person got acidosis. Okay? If the arterial blood pH goes above 7.45, normally it is 7.40. If it goes above 7.45, that is alkalosis. Okay? Both are, just remember that both are dangerous for our body, alkalosis as well as acidosis. That's why the pH must be maintained in our body. Who maintains pH in our body? As I have mentioned already, that in our body we have buffers. Those are called body buffers. 3 types of buffers are present in our body. They try to maintain the pH or keep the pH constant. What are those 3 types of buffers? Chemical buffers, brain stem respiratory centers, and kidneys or renal mechanisms. Those are 3 buffers or buffer systems in our body. So we have chemical buffers, we have brain stem buffers, brain stem respiratory centers work as buffer, and your kidney system also works as buffer. Now, the chemical buffers are very fast, very rapid. If your body pH changes, the chemical buffers will first come forward, very quickly act and will stop that change. That's why we say that chemical buffers are first line of defense. They will work very fast. Okay, so acids. If I ask you, what is the definition of an acid? How will define acid? Acid is a chemical that can quickly and easily release hydrogen ion. Okay? So acid is a chemical that can quickly or easily release what? Hydrogen ion. So hydrochloric acid. Why we say this is an acid? Because HCl or hydrochloric acid can very easily split into hydrogen ion and chloride. That means very quickly or easily donate or release hydrogen. This is carbonic acid, H2CO3. Why it is also an acid? Because it also can quickly release hydrogen. Quickly release hydrogen. Now, if I both are acids, now if I tell that carbonic acid can more quickly release hydrogen ion, not only more quickly, can release more hydrogen ion than hydrochloric acid. Hydrochloric acid is a little bit slower than carbonic acid, as well as release less number of hydrogen ion. Then which one is the strong acid? This one releases very fast and more. This one releases a little bit slower and less. So which one is stronger? This one, because the definition of acid is the chemical that can quickly release the hydrogen ion. Yes.
On the slide it says hydrochloric acid is the strong acid and weak acid.
Yes. So, okay, very good. So it's trying to find my mistake. That's good. I like that. So, is always carbonic acid is all carbonic acids are strong? You can change the step, right? Not all hydrochloric acids are weak. You can make many different powers of hydrochloric acid. So if I decrease the acidity of carbonic acid and increase this, then I can say this is stronger than it. Is it easy? I can make it weak, I can make it stronger. I can make it weak, I can make it stronger. Just to answer it, okay? So don't always think that that is what is in the book, that you have to think this is just I'm giving you example, right? That if you think this is strong, this is weak, then which one is strong? Because we can make the strength of hydrochloric acid in many different levels. Strong hydrochloric acid, very weak hydrochloric acid, extremely weak hydrochloric, we can make it. We can make strong carbonic acid, very weak carbonic acid. Okay? So just an example that how it can be stronger, how it can be weak. Important chemical buffers. Just remember these names. The chemical buffers, you know that those are the first line of defenses and they act very rapidly, very quickly. So what are the important chemical buffers? Important chemical buffers in our body are bicarbonate buffer system, phosphate buffer system, protein buffer system. So those are important chemical buffers. Now, you know the definition of acid. If I ask you, what is the definition of a buffer? You know, what is a buffer? Yes, you're right. Yes, so buffers keep the pH constant, right? Unchanged. Now, a buffer is not a single or one chemical. Buffer is a mixture of two chemicals. So now we can define that buffer is a mixture of chemicals that keeps the pH constant. So when just I'll give you one example, bicarbonate buffer system. Bicarbonate buffer system has mixture of which chemicals? H2CO3 and HCO3. These two together form the bicarbonate buffer. Why we need two chemicals? The reason is if the hydrogen ion concentration in your body has increased, that means your body becomes acidic or alkaline? You're right. So hydrogen ion more means more acidic, because we know that acids do what? Yes, release hydrogen. Right? So if more acid in your body, that means more hydrogen ion in your body. So that's why hydrogen ion increase means your body becomes acidic. Just know that hydrogen ion increase means pH is low. So we have talked about that before. More hydrogen ion means pH is less. pH is less means acidic. Right? pH less means acidic. Okay. So just tell me, if that happens, your body becomes acidic, that means your body has more hydrogen ion. This should be removed, right, from the body. If you can remove that free hydrogen ion, then your body pH will be adjusted, will come back, right, to normal. So in this case, you have to remove this. Who will do that? The buffer. In this case, what will happen? This component, but this chemical will come forward, will bind with hydrogen. Quickly, very quickly, this will get attached to that free hydrogen and will remove it. Okay? So no more free hydrogen is in the body. Now, you may ask that after this we are getting acid. This is acid, right? Then what's the benefit? Remember that free hydrogen ion is more stronger than this is weak acid. So it will just, main purpose here is removal of free hydrogen ion. Okay? So removal of free hydrogen ion will increase the pH. So in this case, this will come forward. Now, if in your body hydrogen ion concentration decreases below normal, then your body pH will do what? Increase. Very good. Hydrogen ion less means pH more. pH more means alkaline, right? Alkaline. So now in your body hydrogen ion concentration has decreased. What we have to do? We have to add hydrogen ion to increase or take it out? Add, right? Because in your body hydrogen ion has gone down. So we have to produce hydrogen ion. In this case, this will quickly come forward. And add hydrogen ion here. So hydrogen ion concentration will go up. So you see that in our buffer we need two chemicals, right? One will remove hydrogen ion if we need, another will do what? Add hydrogen ion when we need. That's why we need two. One to add, one to remove. For example, all buffers have that. That's how the buffers work.
So when hydrogen is high, pH is higher?
When hydrogen is high, pH is lower.
Yeah, well, sorry. Yeah.
Hydrogen and pH always in opposite direction. Okay? And pH lower means acid.
Okay.
Respiratory centers. I'll just quickly go over this. You already know. Don't make it confused. So just think that if I ask you to stop breathing, then what will happen in your body? Inside your body, carbon dioxide will increase or decrease? Very good, you all know that. So if you stop breathing, carbon dioxide will increase. And carbon dioxide will, in your body you have water everywhere, right? When carbon dioxide will increase, more carbon dioxide will react with water and will produce, that will release hydrogen ion and bicarbonate. So now you tell me, from this reaction, if carbon dioxide increases, the body will become acidic or alkalosis? Acidic, because more hydrogen ion will be produced, right? So your body will become acidic. In that case, your respiratory center will be stimulated. If you're just simply think that in your body, if carbon dioxide amount increases, you have to breathe more or less? More. We all know that, right? We have to breathe more. Why we will breathe more? Because that carbon dioxide will produce hydrogen ion and that will stimulate your respiratory centers. You cannot breathe more without signal from the respiratory centers. You remember those centers, respiratory centers in the brain system, right? Inspiratory group, expiratory group, pontine respiratory center. So those will be stimulated by increased carbon dioxide, by hydrogen ion. So automatically, you don't need to, you don't even know if for some reason your carbon dioxide concentration has increased, your brain will do that, increase your breathing and will release the carbon dioxide. You don't have to look if my body becomes acidic. You don't need to do that, but your respiratory will be stimulated. Make sense? So that in that way, your brain respiratory centers work as buffer. Make sense? To adjust the pH. So that is the respiratory buffer system. Another is kidneys or your urinary system also helps in regulation of pH. When we talk about the functions, important functions of kidneys, you probably remember I said that this is your nephron. Now you will understand better. Okay. If hydrogen ion concentration increases in your body becomes acidic. In that case, now you tell me, which one should occur? Reabsorption of hydrogen ion or secretion of hydrogen ion? Secretion, because in your body you have high concentration of hydrogen ion that should get out from the body. So in different locations of your nephron, what will happen? Secretion of hydrogen ion will occur. That will get out from the body with urine. Okay? So your hydrogen ion concentration will go down. And that's the renal buffer system. How the kidneys work to regulate the pH. Make sense? Okay, so you see the respiratory centers work as buffer. Centers work as buffer. Your kidneys work as buffer. And of course the chemical buffers, those are fast acting buffers, which work as buffers. Okay, so those are the three. Did I talk about some clinical conditions that, like related to the production of urine, anuria, oliguria, polyuria? Did I talk about those? No? Yes, no? Okay. So let's talk about few clinical conditions. So these are related to urine, the amount of urine production. One is anuria. A means absence. Remember, if you see anything starts with A, usually it indicates absence. So anuria is no production of urine, absence of urine production. Now, although the definition is no production of urine, that is anuria, usually if the production of urine is less than 50 milliliter, we say that is anuria. 50 is very small. So if the production of urine is less than 50 milliliter, that is and urine. Polyuria. Frequent urination. If someone runs to the bathroom very frequently, we say polyuria. Okay? Oliguria. Oliguria, if the production of urine is less than 300 to 500 milliliter. That is oliguria. Why we say 300 to 500? It depends. We measure based on the size of the body. If someone's body size is much bigger than another person, then blood volume is more, right? So the amount of urine production will be more. So that's why we don't, say it is exactly 500 or 300. If the size is small, then less than 300. If the size is big, if the production is less than 500, we say oliguria. Pyuria. If you examine the urine and see presence of pus in urine, that is, who has? Someone has pus?
Oh, no, no.
As you are telling that you have that.
No. That's why I was late today.
I was acting up.
So when I said pyuria,
No,
Tracy was
I told her the definition before you said it. So
Okay.
I said, see?
Yes. So pyuria, if you see presence of pus cells or pus in the urea. Hematuria. If you see the presence of blood in urine. So presence of blood in urine is hematuria. Hematuria we divide into two types. One is called gross. Another is microscopic. If you take the urine in a test tube and you can see that the color of urine is red, that means a lot of blood is there, right? So that is gross hematuria. You don't need the microscope. But if the amount of blood is really small, you won't be able to tell, right? So in that case, you have to take a drop of urine and see under the microscope if any red blood cells are there. If you see the presence of red blood cells, but under the microscope, not without the microscope, that is microscopic hematuria. Okay? So gross and microscopic hematuria. So those are few clinical conditions. Try to remember.